Hi, I'm Polly Watt, and we're with my co-founder Mike Voss, and we are here to talk to you about Vivo Pulse and WattNext. So our company is called WattNext, and the tool we've created is Vivo Pulse, which stands for Voices In, Vision Out. This is our website, and on here you have an explanation of what we're doing, the framework we use, and the insights that we deliver. We have an online dashboard that might also show you. We produce an executive summary for the person in the company that this goes to, a full report, and a debrief session. And what we tend to show people first, or in the sales process, is the friction calculator. And when you launch the calculator, you are required to put in currency, name, email, etc., how many employees, and average salary per employee. And then this is the percentage of employees that leave each year, team time lost to unclear priorities or misaligned leadership, percentage of team time lost to internal friction or avoidable work, and percentage of key strategic initiatives that are currently stuck or delayed. And you can move these sliders up and down to reflect the company's situation. And then they calculate the cost. And this gives them an idea of the actual cost of the issues they have currently in the company. And this is really just a sales tool for us. And then we run the diagnostics. So I'm just going to talk you briefly through that. So that process is voice AI that does a series of interviews. The voice AI front end is on 11 Labs. We have agents in there, and then they do the recordings. They speak to all the employees at every level of the company. Those interviews take about 30 minutes. And from those interviews, we aggregate the data. And that is what goes into the report and the dashboard. I'm just going to show you some aggregated data. For example, we break our data down into 3 large areas, which are organizational culture and strategy, leadership, collaboration and structure, and systems, resorting and scalability. And if you break those down further, you can see they break down into our 13 key dimensions. And we break those down further into data points that we're looking for. For example, if you take strategic alignment here, you can see that there's a perception gap of 0.37, and that is the gap between the highest score, in this case, the senior leader, and the employee score. And you can see those indicated here on the graph. And from there, if I break down and go further into strategic alignment, you would see that these are the indicators or the data points that we're looking and what we build our data around. And so for each one of those 13 dimension scores, there are a series of data points or indicators that we're looking for. This is part of the dashboard that the client sees. You would see your diagnostic. So if you're logged in, so that on this company it's text scale, you would see there are various parts through the dashboard here that you can see how you're doing. This is for the company to look at, the contacts that went in and the conversations and whether they're all complete or not, so that you can tell who has and who hasn't done those. That is what the front end of the tools look like. And now I'm going to pass over to Mike, who will show you the back end of what we're doing. So I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. Hey, I'm Mike. I'm Polly's co-founder. Give me a second to share my screen. So I'm logged in as a super admin. So this would be something that Polly and I would do when we would onboard a new client. A couple of ways for us to do that. We'll create the company or import the company. We can do that by a CSV file. We can do that by sending them an email with a link to click on where they can self-register. The purpose is really just to make it as easy as possible for any client we onboard to get going. Now, once we have the company and the people who work at the company in our system, we can go ahead and create a new diagnostic or schedule a diagnostic. It's easy enough for us. We just select the company. What it'll do is it'll allow us to choose which agent we want to use for this diagnostic. We might, depending on our requirements, choose various agents, but typically we have a default. So we'll check Alex over here. We can set a start date and an end date for the diagnostic. So we'll give them a month, and then we can choose who we want to add to that diagnostic. What that'll do is it'll create a new diagnostic record, and the participants will get an email asking them to participate. If we look at a diagnostic that's already run, we'll look at this one over here. we'll see that we can go to the results of the diagnostic, and it'll give us a snapshot of the overall score, the different categories broken down by their level. Each dimension, we can see what their scores were. We can also see a couple of different things. We can see the various diagnostics that we run for a company. We track their progress over time. We can measure how they've improved. We can measure different areas that require different amounts of attention at different times. This particular one is complete, so we'll have a look and we can see the same diagnostic in more detail. Now, this is specific to an individual diagnostic as opposed to their overall history with us doing diagnostics with them. Executive summary over here, we show some of the strengths and improvement areas. We can look at each domain in more detail, broken down by the different roles, and then the overall score. We have some charts where we can see those things. We also have detail for each dimension. So, for example, cross-team collaboration, we can see the scores between the various levels and the overall score. One of the things we do too is we track perception gaps. So what we'll do is we'll rank the biggest gaps between what people are saying. So, for example, if the leaders think they're doing a fantastic job with role clarity and accountability, but employees are saying that they don't, they will get a higher perception gap score, and we'll be able to know where those things are. We also do provide some recommendations, both in the near term, medium term, and long term. And ultimately, you can generate a report too. We have an example of a report here. It goes through a whole bunch of recommendations as well as what it found. You can see some of the strategic recommendations here. For example, quick wins or immediate low effort wins. And there are some things that we recommend that they can do. We can see conversations for a particular company. If we look at that, we can see where they are. Right now, there are a few pending conversations. These are for folks that have received an invite to participate but haven't done that yet. There are also in progress and complete statuses, if I wanted to look at in progress or pending. So in this way, we can choose to follow up on conversations that haven't been actioned yet and make sure that we capture everyone's information prior to analyzing the results. However, we can still analyze results even if everybody doesn't complete their diagnostic. We also are able to see the results of the friction calculator that Polly showed you. So we have access to all of the people who have run. Here's the one Polly just ran here. And we can see that the total cost was $1.25 million. We can export those results to a CSV for us to feed into our various initiatives, whether that's sales, marketing, etc. This is for testing. So we could actually paste the transcript and we could import it. We can manually upload transcripts as well. We can send a test in. This is really just back-end stuff for us to test.
So the final point that we wanted to show you would be so we get emails if there is an issue with someone in the company who is, how we describe it, is standing on the roof of the building. So if someone is having a bad time at work and there are reasons to be worried about them for safety reasons, we would get a report by email that would come to me and Mike and our support team to verify, and then we would report that into the company to let them know if there was a big issue to be dealt with. So we get something like this, which is pretty hard to ignore, and that would tell us about any issues that someone was having, mental health issue, significant, and the evidence that that has flagged in the transcript. So while everything else is anonymized, there is a point before we anonymize all the data that we run it through a safety agent to make sure that no one is at risk in the company, and that if they are, that it is being flagged for immediate attention. And this happens in pretty much real time. A typical problem with previous diagnostics is it could take 12 weeks for someone to actually go through the data and find out that there was an issue. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed this demo talk through of how the system works.
Thank you.